Yo, yo, yo. We are live, homie. What's up, Veek?
Hi.
We're not really doing anything crazy, guys. It's just another stream, except instead of working on a map or some element of the Hydra mod, we're working on drum roll, please. The new engine, the N engine. We're calling it Antikythera. Antikythera, by the way, if people don't know, is the Greek mechanism that was found. Well, it's an island or something, some province of Greece, but it's an ancient Greek invention called the Antikythera mechanism. It was essentially something to do with a clock or some timekeeping. It was a pretty advanced mechanism, in fact. Might as well have been something related to, like, it wasn't really a computer, but it was something pretty advanced either way. And the idea is, it's lost knowledge, lost technology, just like performant programs in 2021. So we're aiming to change that, and that's why it's named that. Now we're gonna get to work on it. We've got the page in the description. You can take a look at what I've documented so far with Veek's assistance. Yeah, it was a very easy thing to do, actually. What's up, Luciferius? Why do you think every time I'm going, it's a soy face? That's me being excited. You can't make fun of me for being excited about a new engine. In fact, you should make the same face every time you see that face, because you know that when I'm reacting like that as the thumbnail of a stream, it means it's time for an engine development stream. What's going on, Alexander? Welcome. So I'm not going to do too much of a... I'll do a very brief run through of the page, and then we'll join Veek as he starts to program stuff and I start to document stuff. We do have a bit of a roadmap, which is nice. That was like the first thing, is I wanted to fill out this page and figure out what we were actually aiming for. Obviously, there's a ton of stuff that's kind of missing from this particular development or this particular page or whatever. We're making our own engine, Orcs Must Live. That's actually what this stream is all about, is us starting to properly work on the programming side of it. We've dilly-dallied perhaps a bit too long. We've taken our sweet time getting ready for this moment, and I said, fuck it, like, people are interested in the engine development. People are obviously, like, I'm one of the people who is most interested in it, because I just want to make RTS content. I just want to make an RTS, and to do that, I need an engine. So since no good engines exist, might as well do it myself. We got Shirk in the chat as well. Welcome. So we're starting things off pretty simply by talking about the technical aspects of the engine, what it's built in. And we've got, obviously, the Go language, which I was initially very skeptical of because of the fact that Google is involved. But it looks to be a superior version of C++. Seems faster, seems to support more things. And especially for our purposes as prospective game developers and engine architects, it seems like it's going to be a pretty nice fit. We might even be able to use it as an alternative for a scripted language, which would essentially be like C# or JavaScript or something. It would essentially be a compiled language in theory. If we can use Go and it can not rather be compiled, but instead just work on runtime, then we would have like real-time edits of in-game UI elements and stuff, which I would really like to push for. You can see a little bit further down in the features section, there's actually some stuff about that. We're going to be using OpenGL to start with for graphics processing, because we don't know enough to handle Vulkan, realistically speaking, and after some cursory glances, it doesn't seem like DirectX has what it takes. So we'll start with OpenGL, which seems like it's a minefield in and of itself. We might pivot early on, but that depends on how our early tests go. In theory, we can just start with OpenGL, and then we can swap out implementation for something else further down the line if we feel like it's, more important that way. And aside from that, we can get into what we actually want for the features. So all of that stuff was technobabble for most people, I imagine. The features are where we can speak to the masses, so to speak. Yeah, the skull is Mike. He's a pretty cool guy. He's my overlord. He whips me into shape when I'm lazy. So we have the first feature set, if you will, is that we're designing this with modding in mind. And modding is kind of a loose term nowadays. Really, maybe what we could do is we could call that community content development or something. The idea is we want to make sure that not only is this an open source engine, but all of the games that we ourselves make as first party content would also be open source. And no matter how advanced our code and how maybe like imposing some of those challenges of understanding the code may seem, the ideal scenario would be that we wouldn't obfuscate anything. It would be 100% transparent. If you're an advanced user or you want to become an advanced user, you want to learn, you're not going to have to dig through things and decompile shit. It's just going to be there. And we're not going to hide away all of the advanced stuff that might scare off newer users or beginners. We're just going to present it there. And if you don't understand it, then refer to the documentation. We will certainly be trying to achieve some sort of self-documenting code, ideally. And we're going to try to make sure it's very human readable. But obviously, you might have to start looking at like user like forums or some place where you might be able to find more information on it. And that's like one of the main features of it in general. And I think that it being transparent and open source like that will also keep us honest as programmers, where we're not going to want to just show really bad code, obviously. So it's just another way to reinforce the idea that you need some programming ethics, obviously. And did we already go over the name Antikythera? Yes, I talked about that at the beginning. Basically, the Greek machination, the Antikythera mechanism, it's this forgotten technology, just like performant programs that actually work in 2021 is completely forgotten technology. So we're reclaiming that with the Antikythera engine. It's not quite a mechanism. It's not quite a computation timepiece or whatever, but it is something. So yeah, nobody voted on the name. I just came up with it yesterday. I was like, fuck yeah, let's do that. So it's a pretty good name, I think. It fits in a lot of the boxes, IMO. Also, Vic, feel free to jump into anything that I was saying so far. I don't know if you have anything to add just yet, but I know you're busy working on the actual code while I talk to people. So
No, it's all fine. I think it's essentially I think what you said.
hell yeah. All right. Next point in the designed with modding in mind thing is integrated editor for synchronous scenario editing, both in and out of game. This is something I'm personally very excited about. One of our main goals is to have the editor running as part of the game itself. So if you needed to launch the editor without necessarily launching the game, you would essentially, like, it would come pre-installed with a shortcut, basically, that would launch the game with the -editor launch option, and that would launch the editor module without necessarily launching the game. But the idea is that there isn't really a delineation between the two. Like, the engine is just part of the game itself. So it's a little bit different than launching like the world editor for Warcraft 3 or the galaxy editor for StarCraft 2 or even Star Edit or SEM Draft for Brood War. It's actually a part of the game. And what that enables us to do is, for one, something you could do anyway, even if it was a separate module, is you could create this sort of live session and have somebody else pop into your map and help you make the map, in theory, or they could work on some other element of it. Basically, they would be jacked into your editor session, so they could open up a new map on their side and start working on that. They could open up like the data side of things. They could figure out like editing some of the scripts or whatever for the coding side of things, whatever you need to program, be it AI or be it like some new unit behavior. And all of that stuff could be done synchronized. So you would have that in real time, sort of like Google Docs or something to that effect, but for actually making a map or putting together a mod or whatever you wanted to do. The other thing that this achieves is, especially if we end up getting it integrated into the same game, is that we can have one or more players in a game open up the map in the editor and edit it in real time while other players are responding. So they would essentially be like having the editing power and being able to like delete units while they're being used by players, in theory, if they wanted to, placing units on the spot for some players, obviously changing the terrain radically, adding a new expansion or whatever in the middle of the game, all of that while the game is running. That is a really big feature for me, because even though I imagine it would be used in very niche scenarios, I just think that if we can succeed in that department, then that would be like a nice way to say, look at like we've obviously got competent netcode to handle all of this stuff, and we've got a very reasonable game like in terms of how it's programmed on the lower level, so that like adding another resource area in the middle of runtime doesn't crash the game like it can do in StarCraft or whatever the case may be. So just based on the fact that we have all of those elements, I think that's going to be pretty useful. And the other thing that it enables that wouldn't be particularly niche, in my opinion, is if you launch a game and you're testing it with your friends and you're like, oh, hold up, I forgot to like set this player to the right force, or give this, set this trigger up to ally or unally a certain player, or share vision or whatever. You can just go in to the editor module and edit it real quick, save it, and the changes take into effect. There'd be an option to either have real-time changes, or there would be an option to only change the map when you hit the save key or something to that effect. So you'd have like either or, whatever you wanted to do. So the idea is, yes, you could even have, as Shirk says in the Twitch chat, StarCraft Dungeons and Dragons. You could have a dungeon master, and you could have him like place shit around. That is something that I was thinking of as well, as like almost like the Cortex roleplay overlord or whatever the fuck. I think that that's also a possibility. It'll probably be used for that by people who want to have that sort of thing. I'm mostly looking at it as like a quality of life feature for people who are testing maps in multiplayer. The other thing that this would support is the very next point, is the quick launch functionality with the multiplayer lobby support. So the idea is that you have the ability to make a multiplayer lobby through the editor itself. People can join through their game client, and then you can just launch the map. There's no, like, we're going to have, I'll get to the loading stuff and the performance or whatever a little bit later. It's further down. But the main idea is that you instantaneously jump into the level, and if you need to relaunch the map at any point, or if you wanted to, like, go back to the lobby, you would essentially have this lobby support where you would be able to just change the map almost, sort of like, I don't really think the same thing has happened in any RTS that I'm aware of. But I guess in StarCraft 2, you have like the party system, and then you can all join a map. In this case, it would be sort of like that, where you're just selecting the map, except unlike StarCraft 2, we're not programming our interface in like off of console, specifications or whatever the hell they were doing. So it won't take 8 years to add like 6 AI to a map, for example. I can't believe that's still a bug in that game. So yeah, we're not handling any of that stuff the same way. So it'll be much more performant. We go into the later stages of this whole designed with modding in mind feature set. There's the limitless and flexible data structure. This is kind of self-explanatory. It basically means you're not going to have limits on like how many units you can have, or anything like that. So you won't have any issues there. And the other thing is that I'm pretty excited about is the automatic compilation, or perhaps decompilation might be a better term, of 3D models into sprite sheets. You would have to somehow specify this, probably with like a text file that's in the same directory. And the main achievement that this unlocks is not even necessarily for modders or for people who want to make community content. I think it's even helpful for us for cases where we want to, say, like make a change to a model without having to recompile manually. If we can somehow get the game to automatically, or like the engine, right, to automatically compile the 3D model into a sprite sheet for use in the engine's functionality or whatever, I think we would be able to handle a lot of very small changes at any point, basically. And the idea is that you don't actually ship with the 3D models, which reduces file size. You only ship with the sprite sheets. However, I do think that sometimes you might end up including the 3D models in like mod packages or something. I guess that would just be for the sake of having things open source. We would keep those likely as a separate download in case you wanted to edit them yourself. But to save on file size, I would imagine most people, like modders as well as us, would just delete the 3D models from the project directory, or omit them from the actual installer, or something to that effect. And you just wouldn't need them. You would compile them, and the sprite sheets themselves would be changed on, like, say, when the patch hits or something. And that way we don't have the file size issues of having the 3D models in the actual project directory. And we also preserve the idea of very easily changing, like, a small little thing on a model, or making some tweak and then seeing how it pans out in the actual sprite sheet itself. So that's obviously a much more technical side of things, but I think it's quite important for making things easier to handle in terms of the 3D art side of things, or whatever. Like, I guess it would be 2D art essentially, but when you're sourcing it from a 3D model. We've also got pretty big stints where we're focusing very heavily on performance. That's the next feature set. We want sub-second launch times. We want to be able to actually start our game faster than Brood War itself starts, which is obviously a 1998 game. We're holding ourselves to those kinds of standards. So even if we're not able to achieve that, which I think we will be able to, I would like to at least not veer away from that standard too far. The idea is that, like, in an ideal world, a mapper or a developer or whatever can push the hot launch button, and but like basically after he releases his mouse button, like in the time it takes him to release the mouse button, he's in his map ready to play or ready to start something. That would be the super ideal scenario. I don't know how exactly that will work, but the lower the response time on that sort of thing, the better testing is going to be. The fact that, like, for example, in Brood War editing, I've had to essentially recompile my exe a bunch of times to add like a change to some files or whatever. So I have to first change the file, then I've got to change the exe, then I've got to run the exe, and then I've got to get to the right map. It's a lot of steps, and maybe you can omit like one or two of those and make it significantly faster. That's kind of what we're going for in this. We're also looking to have an average of below 30 milliseconds of latency. For comparison, StarCraft 2 now seems to have about 150, according to what Mesk said in the chat yesterday, which is pretty heavy. And this is mostly related to networking. I don't think there would be any. There's certainly not going to be any enforced latency or whatever for the sake of, like, worse computers or something. I don't think that our program will be so poorly performant that we'll need to enforce latency so that everybody plays as if they were running on a terrible computer, because I think even terrible computers will probably be able to run the game pretty well. Like, a very low system requirements is something else that I should throw into the performance section, actually. And then, of course, then you've got the file size bloat, the idea that we are trying to avoid that to an extreme degree, which is where, like, the 3D models being excluded from the project directory come from. So there you go. And then the roadmap is just like how we're going to get into this. Obviously, you see some stuff like starting Fraud Nights up with this engine in the more distant future. I don't actually know how distant it will be. We'll see how long it takes us to get something done. But that was the introduction to Antikythera. And if you have any other questions, feel free to throw it in. But for now, we're actually going to get into it. Or I'm going to get into it. Veek's already getting into it. Let's see what you've been up to. Homie, what's going on here? We've got... Oh, I keep getting moved to whatever you're typing.
I should be able to disable that. Somewhere in the live share settings.
Session details. I can turn off that. Configure settings. What? I don't know how any of this stuff works. I see focus requests, but I don't think that's related.
There is a button called Focus Participants, I think it's that.
Oh. Not. Yeah, you just changed what I was looking at.
Oh. You might need to actually click me.
What?
You might need to click on me and like disable the following somehow.
Oh,
maybe
unfollow for participant. There you go. Yeah, now I can't see you. Perfect. You might actually be able to run it. Yeah, dude. The idea is that nobody should like you know, if you can run Brood War, I want you to be able to run my game. Basically, that's my metric. I'm not sure if that's where we'll go, but ideally, like, I'm not necessarily going to say stuff like, oh yeah, if you can run Brood War, and then like also extend like compatibility to fucking Windows XP or 98 or whatever. I don't need to worry about that. But if you can run Brood War and you have a reasonably recent operating system like Windows 7, 8, or 10, I don't see a reason to avoid that necessarily. So I don't think we'll run into any issues. That's another reason to avoid the latest DirectX stuff, because it actually does isolate your game to only Windows 10, which is probably still a majority of users, but no reason to do that, obviously. And yes, Shirk, I agree. It's very exciting to actually get started.
I think Necron still uses Windows 7.
Yeah, I think a large portion of people who have found a way to avoid upgrading in quotes should be using Windows. Like I would use Windows 7 if I still fucking could, but I've already upgraded. So upgraded. All right. So looks like I'm here to help you with the struct, right? Or the set of structs. I thought you said something about like structs being almost primitive. Are they still the best thing to use for this instead of like, or the only other stuff that's out there for that would be a struct replacement would probably be something that's like object oriented stuff, I guess.
Oh, I'll go on user structs, so it's not a problem. So structs basically only define types. In C++, you also had like classes which also define methods, but that's not a best coding
okay.
practice.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of. Yeah. I think it will be realistic. The thing is, like, I don't think we're going to have GPU intensive things, so your graphics card will not need to be. It's going to be computationally expensive for the CPU, the processor. That will be the main thing that will be a performance gate or whatever, a bottleneck. And I would ideally get to the point where people can run at like 150 frames per second or whatever, even on like really old hardware. And the only time that the bottleneck comes into play would essentially be related to stuff like you would be, if you were like speeding the game up to a ridiculous degree or running it at a faster than normal game speed for the sake of like testing something, then yeah, you might have a bottleneck. But ideally for normal playing, you wouldn't have any issues at all. Like, for example, the game wouldn't get more expensive with more graphics on the screen. It would technically, but it wouldn't be significantly more. It'll get more expensive for more units because it's running like pathfinding info and all of this other stuff, right? So that's where that can come from, and that is where the bottleneck will be in general for RTS games, is always the CPU. But we are going to make sure that our code itself is as computationally inexpensive as possible while still achieving the same stuff, right? I don't know about like map makers and monetizing content. I I don't have any plans of like having premium maps or whatever. I think that generally the goal of like content developers, like I think monetized mods are just like a really bad idea in general. It creates this insane like sort of slippery slope to until you're starting to like steal from other people to get your map looking a bit better and all this other stuff. Like it encourages so many bad behaviors. So I wouldn't outright monetize and say you can't play this unless you pay for it, which is what Blizzard eventually did for StarCraft 2, which is pretty hilarious. But I'm not going to like start knocking down people's doors and like taking down people's maps because they put a PayPal link there. Like I would probably have something in the EULA, in the end user license agreement, that says that if you if you show like preferential gameplay treatment to people who are like, oh, you donated to me so you can get like a competitive advantage in this, like that's going to be against the rules for obvious reasons. And I don't even think I'll need to enforce that necessarily because I feel like it's just so obvious, but I probably will. Like I'm probably underestimating the kind of people that would probably do that. So if you're playing Desert Strike and your units move like 5% faster or some shit because you donated to the author, like that's going to be against the rules. But I'm not going to like stop people from getting tips in that sense. I don't have any issues with that. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty averse to the idea of like locking anything like that behind a paywall. Like for example, I'm not going to have any microtransactions in the game. There's not going to be any like if you want to support me, you spread the word and get other people to buy the game. Like if you want to support us as the Frauds Club Development Studio or whatever the fuck we call ourselves, that's how you spread you spread the word, you get other people interested and you get people playing. And when you buy the game, you're going to have all current, past, and future content. So anything any expansion pack that comes out, you get it. Like, I'm not going to charge for that shit. Because even though it's additional content and it takes more hours for me, it's against my ethics to charge for what is essentially just like additional content in that sense. I can still see a convincing argument for charging if it's like double the content from the base game. But what you're buying with the license or whatever to the actual game is also like the engine stuff. It's also like it's more than just any content expansion we'll have. So there's not going to be anything like that. You're just going to own everything outright, and that's how I want to handle it. The day an official company is formed will be the day you rise into the sky. Yeah, maybe because your sides will be in orbit that there's a game studio called the Frauds Club or whatever. Plot twist: StarCraft 2 Arcade was really just a beta platform from Mapmaker 5. I wouldn't even be surprised, man. What's up, Kian? Anyway, how you doing? We just started on the engine development. Well, it's been in a weird state where it had been started, but it hadn't really been maintained. We're getting a real good push going. We've got the page in the description where you can read up on this. I did give a bit of a run through earlier. Pro bathwater as part of the deluxe edition. Yeah. Not sure about that one either. I think like maybe I'll throw a fucking PayPal link or some sort of support link for the studio if people want to continue to donate, if they feel like it's worth more money than they paid for it or whatever. But I'm not going to like push that necessarily. There will be like a very like maybe an obscure support button or something. Yeah, I guess in that sense it's like it's pretty much just what I was saying. It's simulation timing as usual, but buy me a coffee. Donate me on Patreon to get access to unique engine features. Imagine you have to be a Patreon supporter of at least $50 per month to unlock this feature. Yeah, I guess that would make sense, right? I want to wait until I have something like until all of us have put together something that is demonstrably usable. I would prefer to wait until like then. I don't know about like licensing or whatever. Like I'm not gonna I'm not gonna make people pay to use my engine. Obviously, it's open source, so I think by definition it can't be like that. I don't know anything about the licensing side of things. I'm just going to avoid all that shit because all of that secondary, like we can worry about monetization. We can worry about how I'm going to like use this to get money, get enough money to eat or whatever. Like that can be worried about later on. I'll be fine financially for the foreseeable future anyway. And I'm not really worried about that, thankfully. So as long as I still have power to the computer and I can still like upload videos and stream and stuff, then I don't see any reason why we can't continue development in that sense. Yeah, I would say like we could have merch. Like I would not shy away from having actual merchandise for sale, and I wouldn't charge like ridiculous rates either, because I do feel like there's an insane markup from what little I saw when I was looking at like Design by Human. I think is it does not take a lot of money to make a shirt, but most shirts that I see branded are like $30 or something when like I think that's $20 profit or something. Like maybe I just misread it or maybe it's changed since I've last looked at it, but it's pretty ridiculous how much of an upcharge it is. Like I don't need you to be like spending ridiculous amounts of money on merch. Frauds Club merch. Yeah, the Pronogo t-shirt. It's just the thumbnail from the YouTube video where it's me going so epic. All right. I'm tabbing back in again. What's going on here? We've got some stuff.
Yeah, I'd like some feedback, TBH.
Yeah, the shirts get expensive, hats get expensive. The only hats will be in the game, obviously. You can pay money to get a hat on your unit, like Hat Fortress 2. Obviously a joke. Don't take that one seriously. All right. So what did you want feedback on specifically? Because I was just going to start like fleshing out more of these.
On the types.
Like hey, you have generic types and unit types and stuff.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we did have mover, right? This was I think this is fine, I guess. My man so what I'm thinking about is like I guess for if it's normal, then acceleration would be, or not acceleration, top speed would just be the speed always. Is that right? Like when it's moving, top speed would be its speed, and then you just leave acceleration 0. The other thing is maybe we should have deceleration if we wanted units to decelerate faster or slower than they accelerate, but It would have to be like zero. If zero, then just inherit it from acceleration or something.
Right. Yeah, we'll see.
So that might work. I'll just throw that in there. And then just document that. We got health shields, energy armor type, sight range. Yeah, we need a lot of other things here. Well, for this, I can just boot up the classic units.dat file, dude. Here we go. At least one person in real life that would understand the Protogo t-shirt. That is true, I guess. Spread the fucking word. So health, shields, energy. So we need to figure out what we're doing for shields because there has to be more than just shields, right? We need like I guess we can just modify shields, can't we? We can just modify what like essentially we need ways to have additional health bars without it being like documented for necessarily or delineated for every unit. I guess that's what you were talking about here, where you can have like extra stuff. Oh, there you go. And then you can make the resource bar. We can define this somewhere, presumably.
Yeah, it would be keyed by a name, like for example, energy would be energy.
Yeah. Do we write that key somewhere else? How would we read this specifically?
I think you would be able to actually define custom types on fly in the like the scripting side of things.
Yeah, but the problem is if we're doing damage, then we have to somehow like figure out what do they have for resource. So if they have like a shield type, then damage that first. We basically have to figure out like what to damage first and what to subtract like for certain costs and stuff.
So I guess we would just have like resource bars for energy types and like I don't know mana or whatever we would use.
Yeah, so there would be a couple of different ones for that, and then there'd be like health shields. Okay, but the question is like, how do we know when we're? Maybe this is something that we can resolve much later. I don't know. But what I was thinking of is, how do we know what the essentially what the priority list of things to? Oh, okay. Well, you fucking read my mind, homie. Thoughts on shield armor? Units have base armor, but zero shield armor currently. Yeah, obviously that was something that was originally upgraded. And I guess we should have a type here, shouldn't we? Something like type would be like, or does it matter? Would we?
No, because we already have the two arrays.
Oh right, yeah, you're storing them separately.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Shield armor is something that I wouldn't mind having it be like a status effect to boost shield armor, and maybe some units just would have passively greater shield armor or something. The other thing I was thinking of is that maybe shield armor would actually decrease based on the shield. Like this might be like a specific behavior, but I was thinking you would actually have like, say you have a unit with 300 shields. So it would start off with 2 shield armor, and then when it drops to 200 shields, it would go down to 1 shield armor, and when it drops to 100 shields, it would go down to 0 shield armor. I was thinking something like that, but well, there's not going to be upgrades for our stuff, so you don't have to really worry about scaling. I'm not really 100% sure what you mean. Oh, I guess you're talking about like armor class types or whatever, which would be like knocking instead of knocking a percentage. I don't know why you would want. Oh, wait. What scales as flat and what scales as percentage? I think the only thing that scales as flat is actual physical armor or any armor subtracting damage. But I think that's fine. Like I'm not sure what the misgiving is for that. Because obviously, if I made that percentage based, it would just be like Warcraft 3 and it would just be a disaster, wouldn't it? It would actually be more of a headache. Like Warcraft 3 made it so that armor reduced a percentage of damage instead of actually reducing damage flat. So I guess what you're doing now is you're putting together like we would need. Well, I guess it should be above it, but it would be like. Oh wait, no, never mind. You're not doing that. I was thinking we should have. Yeah, we have to figure out what we're doing for that. Oh, I agree. Percentages make things harder to calculate on the fly. I 100% agree with that. So, like, the main issue is figuring out how to present the speed in a more simple way. I think just making one issue that might be the case is like adding percentages or whatever. So, like, having one debuff that reduces something by 20% and then another debuff that reduces it by 30%. Should we make that reduce it just by 50% instead of reducing the 20% reduction by 30%, like the result of the 20% reduction, reducing that by 30%? Or should we make it more intuitive, perhaps, where if you're not a mathematician, you might just think, oh, that means it'll be 50%. Like that, in that case, it probably should be done some way like that. But that is something that we have to figure out later on. But I think that armor providing flat damage reduction is actually better for the game state health than armor providing a percentage reduction. No, Warcraft 3 is a really bad game, man. I'm sorry to break it to you. And its stats are a huge reason why. Although another issue is just the scaling, the fact that like everything has 1,000,000 damage. I mean 1,000,000 health and no damage.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest factor, and also RNG.
Yeah, RNG is another massive factor. HP regeneration and passive like reduction and stuff. I would avoid everything to do with Warcraft 3, to be honest. Like, not everything about it is objectively bad, but it's so poorly executed that it's certainly by no means a model that we want to achieve. Now, the good news is, if somebody does like Warcraft 3 and they want to inherit Warcraft 3 values in our engine, then they can do so because it's open source. I mean, they'll have to do some work, but it's possible. I actually wouldn't mind having some sort of fantasy stuff in the using this engine, but the question is whether or not we can get the assets for it, right? And that's always going to be the question, unfortunately. So we've got mover stats. What are you refactoring right now? Just the what I'm noticing is you have this
structured.
You seem to be starting to define these types based on like if there's ever. I see a lot of nested stuff basically. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so for example, mover stats or unit stats, right? So here's my reasoning. Because I believe it would be helpful later on for buffs and debuffs to have it separated.
So instead of accessing the mover struct, you just access the mover stats struct, basically. Don't you have to go to mover and then mover stats?
Made it unreadable. Yeah, we'll figure out something out.
Okay. So anyway, we've got the health bars, the resource bars, the armor type, which is going to be interesting. We have
armor type is like the percentage reduction.
Yeah, so it's armor class. It's like Titanic or large.
Yeah, it's per resource type though. So, so basically, would be able to define all the reductions on fly.
So you would be able to say like the reduction of the shields is different than the reduction of the HP.
Yeah, so basically instead of having like shield reduction and like like HP reduction and other ones,
Yeah.
which we would probably have. We would just have a map that's extendable from the scripting side.
And then essentially,
so for example,
how would we
one is
define these
no
maps
reduction.
exactly? Okay.
0.5 is 50% reduction. Like
yeah,
so
the problem is we need
75
to
is
define. We need to
25.
reduce incoming damage based on the damage type as well.
Yeah, that's why you have UUAD, right?
So basically, that unique identifier gives.
Oh
you,
yeah, because we also need So we would basically need another UUID, I guess. So we would have resource type UUID to weapon type UUID to percentage armor value.
What is the second U, by the way? I know unique, but
Well, I remember it's written like that, but I'm not sure.
oh, okay.
Universally unique identifier.
Ah, okay. Well, we keep hit scan attacks. I actually don't know about this. Some probably will be. Go ahead, Vic.
It probably will be like UUID is probably wrong name for it, but whatever. You can refactor it later on.
Yeah, it's not a huge issue. So, Alexander was asking about hit scan attacks. Now, hit scan attacks, those instant hits, which is like the Marine attack, for example, in the original StarCraft. And
I'm thinking we won't have any.
Yeah.
We could have like a very fast missile that like essentially teleports. Well, and is invisible, I guess. But it would still be a missile, so you can, from gameplay perspective, you can still interact with it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, essentially it would be like if you have some refractive shield that intercepts missiles and then takes damage, like Dark Swarm, I guess, basically, then even the hit scan attack would intercept it, basically, instead of it being like a separate game rule or underlying logic or whatever. What Alexander might be hinting at is many months ago, maybe even upwards of a year ago, he was in the chat of a mod stream and he was talking about melee attacks having a travel time almost, so that you could intercept them or block them or dodge away from them if you were kiting. And this is a really interesting idea to me, and I definitely want to explore that in the new engine. And that is something that I think could actually be really, really useful, because you might even see stuff like melee attacks where basically you might have a very long range melee attack, like maybe the Ultra Core in this new engine can actually attack from a longer, like a farther distance or whatever than normal. But if the unit moves away, then that's easier for that unit to miss. So you would actually want to get that melee combatant closer to the unit and then attack, so to almost guarantee the hit, essentially. If you're fighting against somebody that's kiting backwards, this would change the dynamic, and it would be one of those things that would allow, essentially, like if we implemented this change to Brood War magically, because of course it would require a huge amount of changes there on the engine level. If we magically implemented this change to Brood War, and then we implemented the selection extender, that would actually be a really big benefit, so that melee units wouldn't just win automatically, or like zealots or something wouldn't just like absolutely destroy things because of the fact that you don't have selection limits anymore.
Remember I was trying to implement something like that for Brood War, but I remember it wasn't very good for what we had back then.
Yeah, it didn't quite work out from what I remember. However, I just think that there's a pretty good amount of, like, a pretty good opportunity, essentially, for this to be the experimentation ground for a ton of different stuff. What's up, /escape? Everything stack, or will I discriminate between spells? Oh, like handle stacking buffs. Yeah, I think you would just have stacking buffs. Like, I don't know. Can you give me an example of what would be like a discrimination between spells? I'm thinking like maybe two different things that do the same effect, or have like a similar knock-on effect. Like maybe one thing does multiple things, but one of them is already achieved by another buff or something, or debuff, as it were. I think you'll just have stuff stack. Like if you get, like even if the effective result is 0, like you get speed boosted by 20 and then lost by like speed nerfed by 20 because of 2 competing effects, and you don't have anything, you'd still have those effects technically, because maybe one expires sooner, or maybe one gets cleansed, or maybe one gets, you walk out of the range of the speed boost, or whatever the case may have been. All of that stuff would probably out there. Oh, right. So damaging fields. Yeah, well, it's like two. If imagine if like 2 weapons hitting the same target didn't deal the same damage, right? It's kind of the same thing. So I agree. There is no logic for why Storm shouldn't stack. So yeah, I don't think we would ever have cases where like damage is only dealt by 1 or whatever. I think that's the only thing in the game that's like that, but I could be wrong. Yeah, I wouldn't preserve that. A lot of the things that are just like hard coded, like basically working backwards to the conclusion that they want in terms of Brood War, a lot of that stuff will not be the case in our engine, in our games. We won't have anything like that. So. All right, let me take a look here. I guess we should have structs for. Well, I guess upgrades could just be like stat alterations, buff, debuff, or whatever, so maybe that's fine. Because you would just increase the armor. The question is, I guess maybe the unit stat should have a status in the struct? Or maybe unit should have a status, I guess?
Yeah, I guess.
So it would have, I don't know what it would be. Would it be status? Let me think of some other stuff that, and then would I just add a, I guess you'll do that, but just thinking like, yeah, makes sense. Okay, I see where you decided to only put range in weapon stats because damage and damage type are dealt with missile stats. So there should probably also be like acquisition range in addition to regular range, but maybe that's for unit and not.
Yeah,
weapon.
if you can type that, then sure.
Oh, what? You can't.
No way I will spell that correctly.
There you go. And then I guess it would be. Maybe this should be specified as weapon range instead of just range.
But since we might actually want hit scan attacks for like melee, then we probably need to have damage in weapon stats.
We don't necessarily, because, like I was just suggesting. Well, I guess you just you say we might. So maybe, maybe we should throw that into weapon stats.
Yeah.
Mover is like.
Oh, let's do that. I will just have like a pointer to weapon then. Here.
Movers are handling what the movement actually looks like for a unit or a missile or anything like that, any object in the game. So you would basically have, for example, there in Brood War, there's 2 different types of movement. Well, technically there's 3. One of them is just for projectiles. But the 2 ones for units are Flingy or iScript. And iScript is just, there's no acceleration. It's just start and stop, like a Marine. And Flingy is when there is acceleration, like a Worker or an Archon or any air unit. So in these cases, you would actually have different styles of movement. And the acceleration, deceleration thing is why you have like essentially different movement speeds at various points. So that's the main reason why we have mover as like a separate data type, essentially, because we need to have the mover be separate from the anything else. We need to be able to change any movement stats that way. And ideally we would be able to, like, obviously we're going to be able to calculate what the current speed is and like all of that stuff so that you can display that when you look at the unit. Infinite medics heal you, infinite plagues on you. Yeah, I guess that's another case, right? Is like one of the reasons why Brood War limits you to only being healed by one medic is because otherwise having a bunch of medics and only having a couple of units wounded or whatever, it would obviously be really powerful. And Plague having, I guess the biggest issue with the plague thing is readability, but yeah, I think if you get multiple plagues on you, then you should take multiple bits of damage in that sense. The main issue is that, especially with plague being spreading like coronavirus in Hydra, where if you die with it, you just explode with another set of plague. That would be even more powerful if like you didn't have, or you had like already one plague and you were already kind of getting down there. But that's okay because I think in the new engine we would just have Plague itself be probably a smaller radius, and it would also have a bit of a channel time before it activates. So like the Istrathaleth, formerly known as the Defiler, would have to channel for a moment before actually launching Plague, so to speak. I don't think it would have a missile necessarily, but maybe it would be actually. Maybe that would be the replacement for channel time. So you see this like slow moving, like writhing morass of some sort of organism. And the idea is, well, if you can actually get your Strathaleth into the like front lines without it dying, then you have less travel time on it almost, right? So that way we avoid indicators. We still have the unit be responsive, where it can just launch the projectile and then start walking backwards. And we also have the counterplay at play in that sense. So, and then obviously they become almost like better siege weapons in that sense. We already were discussing that a while back as well. All right, so let me take a look again. Back to units. Do we have we don't seem to have any link between unit and weapons, as in like which weapons the unit uses?
Yeah, that's probably something I missed.
And then I would think costs need to be added, maybe above or below stats. I guess below stats is fine. And then I guess we would use the same resource type map or whatever that you had over here.
Yeah, probably.
Because then we could have, I guess the only issue there is like, can we have, oh yeah, we could. So we could say.
But then we don't really need priority, I don't think. Do we?
Oh yeah, we wouldn't need priority for. Oh, I guess we could use priority in the sense that this is kind of a wild one, but. So this would be unit cost type. Or yeah, I guess I'll just change it to cost type then instead of unit cost type, in case we want like researches or whatever. No foundation. Besides the fact that we're using OpenGL for GPU stuff, we're making this all ourselves. Veek and I, and I'm sure some other people will be pitching in later, like Balethal, Tideman, Iquare, obviously. I actually like the naming convention in general, but I would probably make it faction specific so that when you select a Marine that's owned by the Dominion versus the Confederacy, to use like a more mundane example from like in lore for StarCraft, like it would actually say like Confederate Marine or something. That's obviously something that modders, or not even, I keep calling them modders by like reflexively, but developers could handle that any way they wanted to. That would just be the thing that I would preserve. Oh, there you go. I actually think that it makes sense to even delineate between controllable factions and like sub factions, I guess, because like a faction should probably replace race in case I want like a different tech tree, like the UED versus the conventional Caprulu Terrans or whatever.
I will, baby.
Okay. And now to change everything. No, I'm just kidding. What else do I have here? We've done costs. Oh yeah, I guess we have to throw in. We'll say unit cost. I don't know how he makes it pretty, but I guess we'll figure that out later. I'll just manually do it. Fuck it. What else did we have? I wonder if, yeah, maybe we should have another thing here, which would be like, primals are used to left. Did you have to check that spelling? Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, like one of the key advantages of the map making stuff from what I was talking about earlier, that you can collaborate. But there's also just it's going to be so much better, especially for like creating like different biomes and stuff. We've talked about this before, but we've had like the idea of fading between two textures essentially, or multiple textures, for the sake of having different biomes. So you could have like dirt, and then you could have grass on the dirt, but you'd be able to, basically tell the like use the editor to change where the grass shows and where it doesn't, and yeah, it would basically be stuff like that. Oh, you got it correctly, Luciferius, so I'm proud of you. Good job. As far as tiling goes, we have to figure that one out at a later date, but it will definitely be an interesting one. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I wonder if we should bother having unit flags. I figure that can probably just be thrown into status, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it probably should be. Like, there should be a status for whether or not a building can fly or move or whatever. And then, like, maybe that status would be removed when it lands or something like that. I'm assuming we'll need a map for this. Pretty much, yeah. Actually, map might be wrong for this. I don't know. I guess it wouldn't be a map. It would be like we would actually use the map for something else, and then we would say like, you're muted by the way. Sunset struct. And it would be like,
yeah, I defined it as an empty interface, so we will basically define it later.
oh, you already did it somewhere?
Yeah, on the top it's just an empty interface.
Oh, okay. I was thinking we would actually use like ready and what and stuff as like their own maps, but at the same time, maybe it's better to not so stringently define the types of sounds, and we can figure that out a little bit later. But yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, we could basically have a UUID map or something.
Yeah. So the other thing that we need is dimensions, which I guess would be like, it would be a vector, right? Or not a vector.
Yep.
It would be, would it be a vector?
Yeah, it's a vector.
Okay. Like that's essentially the, and then I guess we would also need placement, which I guess would also be a vector. Instead of box, we can just call it placement. Although that's kind of vague, but whatever. And then the other thing I was thinking of is obviously we need like a link to the portrait. So and then I guess you'll have to define that as an empty interface as well. I feel like elevation should also be it should be something different. It should probably be a struct where it would be the elevation level and then elevation type. So you would have ground or air basically as the types initially, and maybe we would add something like hovering or whatever as well. Well, I guess hovering would just be a, oh no, would hovering be a mover? How are we handling like collision with terrain and stuff? Is that through mover?
I think so.
We should have like a mover type or something. Or no, it would that would be in, would it be in script? Because script is just
probably.
normal accelerated.
So you would want hover as like a ground type, one that ignores collision, right?
Ignores collision with terrain, not with other units.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which isn't even possible in Brood War
So
right now.
yeah, I imagine it would be mover type. I imagine the script would just reference some pathfinding function from the game code itself.
I guess I'll throw this up here as well. This is kind of pointless to me, but maybe we'll find a use for it. I don't think we need to worry about group flags or any of these other flags. It's probably fine. Now all this other stuff is just hard-coded, right? And then subunits are also kind of hard-coded. I wouldn't want to worry about those. We probably don't even need subunits. If we need to have like turret functionality like in Goliaths or whatever, we would just implement like a weapon that can, or like a separate graphic that can turn and fire, I guess. I don't know. Maybe
yeah, I imagine so. It wouldn't be
it wouldn't be a unit, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It would just be like the missile turret attachment, which isn't a unit. It's so weird. They have a working version of not needing an extra unit with the missile turret and the science vessel. Those are just images that launch like weapons or spells or whatever. They could have just done that for the Goliath and the tank. I don't know why they didn't. And then we also won't need different unit entries for
because
siege tank and siege mode.
Siege tank and Goliath have like two different facing directions for the body and for the turret. And missile turret and science vessel don't move their body, don't rotate that. So that would be why, probably.
Yeah, but they move in unison anyway until they actually start. Like the science vessel moves in unison, so I don't think it makes any sense. I think it's just them being dumb. What's up, Wuck? Defining the new engine for the brave new world of our own RTS game. The engine is called Antikythera. Yeah, that is true. Those probably will be units. So I see you've already started to define map related stuff, but let's see.
Yep.
Order, ID, hotkey, action. And then an action is an ID and an action script. So data set is basically like another ID, where if we have like a Marine from the basic data set and a Marine from another data set, they won't conflict. I think we talked about that before. I guess technically they probably wouldn't
Just call
conflict
it
anyway.
namespace.
What? Oh, you've ended the collaborative session. Okay, bye.
Yeah, because I misclicked Control R and I opened another window.
All right.
Bye.
Yeah, I guess. Can I just use the same link, or do you have to send a new one?
Yeah, I think you need a new one. Yeah, it looks like a different one.
Oh, Chox has experience with lockstep multiplayer. That's pretty epic. Yeah, if I mean, if you're interested in actually showing this up, but like that would be like if you're interested in assisting, I guess. The fuck. There we go. Continue. Why? I literally clicked the link. I have to copy and paste it in every time. What a mess. All right, I think I'm loading in. Oh, you have to approve me. Yeah, I think it's a pretty banging idea, TBH. It's certainly something where we can like use that as a what the fuck. We can use that as a basis, right? So yeah, if you feel like parting ways with it. I'm just assuming lockstep peer-to-peer is the best way for an RTS, but maybe there's something where you can actually communicate to a server instead. It's just something I haven't looked into nearly as much as, for example, iQuare has researched it a lot more. Yeah, but it might give us like a framework that we can use, or at least an example of it working, right? So I've actually got to use the bathroom, so I'll return momentarily. Until then, you can I'm following Veek, so you can check his code out and he can yell at you in the chat. BRB. I have returned. Yeah, I think peer-to-peer is probably the only way to go, even for even for what do you call it? Like one-on-ones with Hydra Scale, where there's like a million units and stuff. I think we might be able to use servers for some things, like maybe handling map pools and race pools and stuff, but I don't know. Where's my... How do I find you? Oh, here you are. Okay, perfect. Like, again, I haven't looked into it nearly as much as some of the other people who maybe in this chat right now, maybe will just be joining us later, like Iquare, but... Oh, it's basically just like sending the data between people. If it has to go to a server and then to all the other players, it's an extra step than just going from a player to all the other players. That was my instinct as well, /escape, but apparently that's just not the case. Maybe Chuck's can elaborate. Because my instinct was, if you send everything to a focal point and everybody gets it back from that focal point, is actually less steps. But I think the thing is you don't have to send as much data in if you configure your peer-to-peer stuff correctly. Pre-placed brigades, I like this. Yeah, basically you don't have to worry about that to the same.
And you're muted, by the way.
Oh yeah, I was muted on Discord and I forgot to change that.
Yep.
Yeah, so basically the idea is with lockstep, you're only synchronizing inputs and maybe like outputs from the unit. What do you call it? Like there might be some things you have to synchronize from the map or the scenario where the game actually sends some stuff, but I don't even think that that's the case. I think, for example, if the game changes the scene on you, or you access a different scene, like all you have to do is synchronize the fact that like they're doing that or whatever.
Yeah, that's the thing. So that's why I have action defined here. It's basically it's meant to invoke everything else. It's meant to like act as the input.
Yeah, so the idea is we have to structure our data and our execution around the idea of basically we're structuring this stuff around the idea that we are planning carefully so we don't get desyncs. I guess with a source engine, I like the source code on the engine. Ideally, we would actually be able to document where something goes wrong. Yeah, well, the idea is that it's peer-to-peer lockstep. I don't know what orthogonal means in this context, though. You can synchronize game commands to the server, but I'm pretty sure there's like some enforced
latency
in those
what
cases.
he said basically means that you can have a server-based lockstep, not only peer-to-peer.
Yeah, you could, but I think that enforces latency.
No, the biggest problem is that you need a good host.
Yeah, I guess. So that's something. Maybe we could support both, and then we could switch over to server-based for the majority of stuff in the context of using Steam servers, assuming we go for Steam. Still not 100% sure that we will.
Yep.
But my thinking is we have to start it off with peer-to-peer anyway, because our initial tests are all going to be through like almost like
I mean, we could start a server on the Frauds Club, like.
I don't think it would be very well suited for this. Is the thing. True. So I would prefer to just start with peer-to-peer because it's actually less of a headache in theory.
Yeah, because we can just use Radmin and.
Yeah, exactly. Easy. We could use Radmin. We could use fucking We could just connect to each other, I think. I don't even think we need Radmin necessarily. Yeah, I guess we could have one player act as the local server. The problem then is that that player has, I think, double the, or not double necessarily, but I'm pretty sure the player who is the host is incurring additional performance penalties because they have to run server side things as well as their own client side operation, right?
Yep.
So I don't think that's going to be massive because obviously we're focusing on being very performant. In fact, that is something that I wanted to go and change about my documentation. Let's take a look. And then there was something here for performance that I forget what it was. It was like, oh fuck, I was talking about it during my rant. It was about like sub-second launch times. Oh yeah, it was exceedingly low system requirements. Targeting any machine that can run Brood War. Imagine putting that in. I'm gonna say add additional performance note. So because we're kind of focusing around like an extreme idea of maximizing performance, I think it's feasible, to achieve stuff like this. Since it's lockstep, everybody has to run quote server-side operations anyway. Is that actually true?
Yeah, that's kind of true. But I think you have less of them. I'm not sure though.
I guess what we can do is we can measure a performance impact of using a client as a server instead of lockstep peer-to-peer and using lockstep off of the client server, because that will, I mean, this is all well and good that we're already starting to talk about networking. It's actually really nice because it starts to introduce me to some of the concepts, and obviously it gets, like, in general, people who know more about this than I do can start to provide information on it. But until we actually get something tested and synchronized, and we also have like some sort of debugging that tells us when a desync has happened, and then we like deliberately try to desync something or whatever. Until we have some way to actually track the performance impact of all of this stuff and see what it's like in game, it is hard to document in that sense. So what did we have up here? We had lockstep peer-to-peer networking. I can add a note somewhere that says that handles lockstep through like that says that we'll be exploring peer-to-peer. I guess I can just do that now, right? So I can throw that in there. Let's see. We'll say, yeah, explore networking solutions. So I can just make this a little bit more robust. We could say explore peer-to-peer versus client to host. And that way it's fine. So revise networking note. So that'll be on the roadmap now. That way I won't forget that we obviously had this conversation and all that stuff. Yeah, because I'm not married to any one implementation for any of this stuff. What I want is just something that just works. You know what I mean? So if we can make it just work, like that meme from, I think it's Todd Howard or something, it just works. Or maybe that was Microsoft. I don't remember who did that. If we can make that a reality, though, it'd be sitting pretty. Or standing, in my case. I had to stand up for this one, guys. It's very important. It's a momentous occasion. All right, I think I looked through unit stat pretty aggressively. So time to look at weapon stat. For weapon, we have weapon stats. Oh, you don't reference weapon stats in weapon. Should I add that? Or is that somewhere else? Yeah, it doesn't look like it's anywhere.
Yeah, you should add that.
I don't know how you make it auto format, but
I click Control S, but I have the Go button
okay.
in VS
Yeah,
Code.
I don't have that, so I should get it at some point. All right, so we've got range, acquisition range, weapon range. Oh, I guess we should have max and min as different ranges, right? So maybe should that be a vector then? Or what do you think? Or should min just be a different entry?
For what?
Minimum range, maximum range for weapons?
I guess have a main weapon range as another parameter.
What, like int, comma, int? Oh, no.
Now you just have another variable. So you
Oh.
duplicate this one and type
Okay.
main weapon range.
And then I don't know what to do for splash radius since we want like a fall off, right? So should I just have splash radius outer, medium, inner? Because I feel like that's kind of lazy way to do it, but we could just refactor it later. Because this
like
should probably be like a map or some sort of like thing where we can define outer, medium, inner, and then different gameplay rules if we want like a fourth or fifth factor or whatever.
So what I would do is to define an array of custom struct, and that struct would have radius and the factor, I think. And maybe priority, I'm not sure.
At least the first two. So I guess I can do that. Type. Just leave that as a string, even though that's wrong for now. Actually, I don't know. No, that shouldn't even be in here, should it? I feel like it's kind of redundant to type in the weapon struct weapon in front of things. So maybe I shouldn't do that. But then at the same time, it's more clear at all points if you're accessing the struct. So
Wait, what?
like in weapon, I have weapon name, and then you've written weapon script, but it's in the weapon struct, so it does feel redundant. At the same time, though, it feels like it's more clear, so maybe it's fine.
I don't remember adding weapon name, but
I added weapon name just now. But you have weapon script, weapon stats, all in the weapon struct. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So on the one hand, it's kind of redundant. On the other hand, it's more clear. Like I'm not really sure which one we should be prioritizing, but
So would you want it to be in weapon stats? Or?
no, I'm suggesting if we could remove the weapon prefix of some of this stuff to make it just more like less effort to type.
Well, for name, yes, but for script, I would rather keep it different because they will
and then at that point, it's not consistent. Is my concern, right? So,
yes, but the thing is with the script is that every script, like when I'm noting a different name, I intend different behaviors for it. So it's kind of a different case, I think.
No, I'm not arguing you should change weapon script. What I'm saying is if we can't change this, if we shouldn't change this, then we should probably have weapon in front of everything for consistency's sake. What do you think? I'm open to either one. I'm just saying, like, this is something I was thinking about. And we should lay out the ground rules of how to program this or how to document this stuff and write this stuff so that we...
Well, yeah, I would keep it... I would remove it from everything that's not necessary because it's just redundant. But like I was saying, for weapon script, it actually makes sense to have it.
Yeah.
Because it's like a specific type of script. Because, for example, I could also have, like, I don't know, init script or something. So
yeah, you might have more
like subscripts or something.
Yeah, you might have more scripts in a struct later on.
Something like this could exist, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Fair enough. It's a real stroke of luck that Todd rhymes not only with fraud, but also God and mod. It's pretty, I mean, the jokes just write themselves, don't they? What's up, Iquare? Welcome to the new engine, homie. I think it's pretty epic, to be honest. You think that, but well, we're not going to be worrying about like supporting Windows 98 or whatever. I just mean that if you can run Brood War, you should be able to run Antikythera and any game made in Antikythera, ideally. We're going to try to keep things very clean in terms of all the file size requirements and all that stuff. But yeah, that was something that I added recently. Where try to so I guess I should clarify that so it's not so insane. I say any machine that can run Brood War, not old OS notwithstanding. And then the other thing I should write in here is that in Go language. So we should probably throw in here not multi-platform. We're getting only Windows. So that way I don't get people excited to play Antikythera supported RTSs on their Mac or fucking iPad. People who use Linux can obviously just run it or wrap it in wine or whatever you have to do there. I'm not gonna like make it deliberately difficult, but there's no point in trying to support Mac, or I guess that's pretty much the only other thing. Veek was talking about some like Steam utility that automatically wraps games or something for Linux. Could probably use that when it's actually released. If somebody ends up actually finding a way to do it before then, and they want to, they write a short guide on how to wrap it or whatever, then sure, I'll host that. It's just not something that I need to worry about myself, I don't think. And it would just be a pretty big headache to make it like natively work in a bunch of operating systems. I think Linux is kind of a minefield in that respect, where there's like a million different what distro is that what they call them?
Yeah, but the kernel is the same. So.
Oh, okay. So it wouldn't be like you wouldn't have to worry about compatibility or whatever. Yeah, exactly, Iquare. It's kind of the same mentality that I have, except I have no desire to ever jump through hoops to make it work on Mac. I think Mask made a pretty good counter argument to the idea of multi-platforming as well, in that a lot of modern programs try to be multi-platform, and it actually destroys their performance and obviously bloats their file size pretty massively. So definitely don't want that. I'm not actually sure what SDL is. Veek, were you planning on using WinAPI for low-level stuff, or are we going to use something else? Or have you thought about that yet?
Yeah, I was initially thinking about using Raylib, but I'm not sure. We might also use GLFW or something like that.
So not WinMPA, basically?
Yep.
Well, raylib or GLFW or whatever those things are, if those are
We were
cross-platform...
also, I was also considering SDL and SFML, but I'm not 100% sold on those.
Yeah,
They have
SDL seems a
some.
little bit of a minefield unto itself, right?
SDL is little data and SFML is little to object-oriented IMO.
Yeah. Is nobody home, Luciferius? Nobody's staying at home and social distancing? Can't close the window for you? Just get your cat to do it or something, if you have a cat. We are trying to avoid object-oriented stuff where possible because it just... Any additional library as well is actually kind of a pain. Like, in a perfect world, we wouldn't even... Like, we would write our own graphics integration instead of OpenGL or using something else like that, but that's just because those things suck. We have to use something because we don't have the skills to write that ourselves. But it's pretty frustrating in that sense. Go does not have a borrow checker. No.
No, it doesn't, Iquer.
Yeah, you know, Iquer, I was thinking of naming this engine the Fuck Rust engine, but I decided against it. I thought maybe we should think of something else. Actually, should we use float 32 for the cooldown or just an int? What do you think? Probably a float of some sort.
Yeah, you can use float 64 maybe.
Sure.
Which is basically a double.
You're a double. What about a triple? Would that be float 128?
Nope. I guess so. I'm not sure if that's supported though.
3. It didn't work. Very unfortunate. I guess there should be a... Would we handle buffs that affect weapons through weapon status, or would we do it through the unit? I guess through the unit would be the most consistent, right?
Hey, give me a second.
All right. Yeah, float 64 is double. I can't believe Rust is a real language still. It's pretty wild. I'm not sure if Nave knows the Go language. Don't think he'll be helping us develop the new engine in general, but could be wrong. You never know. What would targets be for a weapon? I guess that would be like... I'll just leave it at that for now. Obviously, it's not allowed, but I think there's object-oriented stuff in Go. We're just not making use of it. 3 minutes behind. That's the best one. Best number. Yeah, we should be able to track when desyncs happen if they have at all. Why have we decided to ditch C++? Well, from what Veek was exploring, Go seems to be just a better C++, essentially. I'm sure it has some downsides compared to C++ in like an objective like list of features sense, but for our purposes, it seems to be fine. I don't know if there's any actual game engines made by Go, but or made in Go. So I don't know that we have like a lot of examples to draw from. But I'll just let Veek handle that because if we run into some issue with the language or whatever, that's something that or related to syntax, I'm sure that's something he can crack. No. We're going to try to use Go as a replacement or alternative for an actual scripting language. So something that would be like dynamic or like C#, basically. We're going to see if we can use Go in replace of that. Because if we can make it so that even the scripting language stuff is runtime instead of compiled, then we can actually make live changes to elements that use that, right?
You can Google some Golang engines. There are some, so it's not like it was never used.
Fair enough. It's just like a really niche language as far as I'm aware, so. Movement and animation maintain the same rate in spite of frame drops. Oh, classic. We would need to implement our own Golang interpreter / compiler. Wait, for what?
There already exists one. There's Go macro.
Well, there you go. I guess we did it. That was easy. When's the engine out? Next week. You don't think Go is embeddable? That's a question for the Veeker. We should take a look in GPTP-A's and Nave's list for data structure descriptions. We're not copying Brood War's data structures one-to-one. We're just using them as inspiration to make a better data structure. I guess the main issue will be figuring out how to actually define all of this stuff for... Well, I don't know. We'll probably have some sort of like editor or whatever. In a modern game, if there's a rock rolling downhill and you have a frame drop, the rock won't go into slow motion. It will skip ahead. But that will cause desyncs in lockstep multiplayer if a player has a frame drop while the other doesn't.
Well, if we are using tick-based system, it won't be an issue because we are not using any delta time or anything like that.
Yeah. It's pretty ridiculous. Max HP, max shields, and max energy should be modifiable values in unit data structure. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, we don't even have those exact exact entries in the data structure. We just have health bar and resource bar, so we can have different kinds of health and different kinds of shields and different kinds of energy.
Am I actually allowed to post links in the chat?
You should be able to. Yeah. You are an approved user. Or you should be.
So here's the link to the library that allows for using Go in runtime.
I don't see it.
So I guess I'm not approved.
Pretty sure you are. Maybe they just changed their fucking rules again. I'll just have to find a comment from you. What's the last video you commented on?
Let me see.
What the fuck? Why can I only scroll so far down in my comments section?
I will comment the newest video.
Okay.
The mod stream one.
Yeah, you let me know when you make that comment so I can approve. This is ridiculous user interface from YouTube. Hey, I don't see it. Was it held for review? Lag. All right, I guess I'll just. There you go. You're approved. Now you can post the links. You should be able to anyway. This is a mess.
So I tried, but it doesn't look like it worked.
The fuck? Well, I don't know. Just send it to me in DMs. Oh, you already did, I guess. Wait, what is this?
That was the comment.
Oh. I'll post it in the chat. Because I'm pretty sure I can post links in my own chat.
Yeah, I hope so.
So what does this allow? Oh, yeah. Go interpreter and debugger. So this would basically allow it to be... this is what allows it to be used as like a interpreted language?
Basically.
Yeah.
Yep. I think it would be really nice to have the same language for both the engine and for the scripting, because then it's easier to actually...
Yeah, it's super, super consistent in that respect. So
yep.
If we can keep it that way, instead of using like convert the JavaScript to C# and the C# to Lua.
Gross.
What's up, Iron Torch? I am putting the U in pudding. Well, I guess that was you, actually. Whatever. Whatever. So we've got... Yeah, a lot of people are very, what do you call it? What's the term? They're very skeptical of Go. I myself am also kind of skeptical still, but I certainly was skeptical before as well. It's certainly an interesting departure from C++, but we've got to test. The Discord bot Deputy Dad is coded in Go, and he's significantly more performant than he was before, although it wasn't written in C++ initially, so whatever. But first test, it's what counts. So the question then, Veek, is what do we do now to generate a game instance? I think we're still pretty far away from that, huh?
Yep.
Should we just finish this? I think we should try. I know you're working on the logger right now?
Yep.
So I guess once you're done with that, should we just start looking into OpenGL implementation, or what do we need to prepare before we start working on the OpenGL stuff?
I know you should try looking at the Railib and see if it's worth using. in your opinion?
Okay. A simple and easy to use library to enjoy video games programming. I feel like that was written by not a native English speaker. Borland BGI graphics lib and by XNA framework. Okay. Raylib is a programming library to enjoy video games programming. No fancy interface, no visual helpers, no auto debugging, just coding in the most pure Spartan programmer's way. Are you ready to learn? No. Any platform that supports C language and OpenGL graphics is valid for Raylib. So what were the potential issues with this? Is it just like one of those things where
it seems like it would help us a lot with starting, but I'm not sure if what do you think about that one?
Well, I like that it has no external dependencies, so you don't get that fucking nested bullshit of having libraries within libraries that also have other libraries.
Yeah, that's really annoying.
That fractal nature is pretty bad, so definitely like that. Don't really care about multi-platform, but that's fine. I guess that would handle our Linux stuff.
Yep.
It's written in.
I mean, I'd like Linux support because I might actually move over there.
Yeah, you and me both, to be honest. But it is one of those things where like I feel like it just requires a lot of micromanagement to set up, right? So I'm not.
Yep.
I don't have the time to really dive into it. I feel like. Okay, so it actually is like something that already uses OpenGL. So what would we?
Yep. You can check the how is it called?
The abstraction layer.
No, it's called spreadsheet or something like that.
Cheat sheet.
Yeah, check that. That has all the functions that we might need.
So this would handle integration with OpenGL by itself, basically?
Yeah.
It's pretty short. I was expecting something much more massive, but I could actually read all of this in like under 30 minutes probably. Maybe even less than that. Yeah, I guess. I mean, might as well try it. Is there like I do wish that people this is something that would never happen because people obviously want to try to sell you their product. I do wish there was like a public like anything that was like the drawback of using this publicly on their website would be nice, so I don't have to like look that up in different ways.
Yeah, that's true.
So somebody could say like, oh, here's a drawback of Raylib, it has this issue or whatever. But it does have 3D support. I don't think we'll be using that, obviously.
Yeah, it might be useful for the sprite sheet rendering, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. If we can implement that through this. This is this open source or no?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, I think I saw it on GitLab, so or GitHub rather. Raylib.
Yeah, it has the source here. Yeah, it's written in C.
Yeah, I saw that it was written in C. I didn't see it probably says it somewhere, but I didn't see that it was open source in the description. VR stereo rendering. I don't think we need to worry about that. Oh yeah, free and open source is literally the last one. I guess Raylib at that point should be a fine starting position. What would the alternatives be? I guess I could just compare what the feature lists say for the other alternatives. You said like SM something or other. Oh no, that was one you weren't sure about. What was the other one? Oh yeah. I don't think we need either of those. There was another one that you said aside from Raylib. Oh, GLFW, yeah. Raylib's license. I'll take a look. zlib libpng license. OSI certified BSD leg license. Allows static linking with closed source software. Provided as is without any express or implied warranty. No damages. Permission granted to use the software for any purpose, including commercial applications. Alter and redistribute it freely. Origin of the software must not be misrepresented. Altered source versions must be plainly marked as such. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it basically lets me do whatever the fuck I want with it, as long as I'm not trying to take credit for Raylib, which would be pretty stupid. Like, pretty dumb thing.
We should probably use a similar license for ourselves, actually.
Yeah, I guess the only for the engine, sure. For the game, it would be an intellectual property. I guess the name of the Antikythera engine, I guess it doesn't need to be intellectually property, like trademarked or whatever. But we could just.
Well, wouldn't be very nice if someone would claim the thing and then like have us to change it.
I don't think Raylib, for example, needed to be trademarked for Ray to do that, right? Because I think the license covers that. Basically, well, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know any of this law stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I would need to talk to people who know a little bit about that.
Well, if you explain what is a GPL license, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know any of this stuff. I think the engine would be pretty permissive, just like Raylib, in that you can use it. Just maybe there would be another thing in there that would say like, like, link back to us somehow. But we're not going to charge for it. Like, no point in that. It's open source, so. I could be an asshole, and I don't even think this is really being an asshole, but I could say that you agree to make your work open source if you use our engine. But
yeah, that would be nice, honestly.
Maybe I should do that. I was thinking that would actually be unreasonable, but the more I think about it, that actually is.
I think Qt actually uses something that makes.
It's something like if
you need to contribute back to the community for using it or modifying it, something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah, GPL license. If that's all that it is, and there's no like extra shit, then yeah, I will agree with that clause of the GPL license. That will certainly. I don't see any reason to allow closed source shit out of Antikythera. Like the thing is, like, maybe some actual development studio would want to, but fuck it. If you want to use this engine, then ultimately they could, in theory, just take a bunch of shit from the engine and use it in their stuff. But I don't imagine they'd be able to. That's actually one of the advantages of it being written in Go, to be honest, is that less people are familiar with that, so you would probably get less, like, quote unquote theft. I don't really care about it, though. I'm making it open source, so. I'm not sure if there's any RTS games made in Go, I don't know about that. So, yeah. That's that, I guess. So what are these language bindings to Go? So I guess we would need to get this Raylib Go thing, and then Raylib. Can we start implementing this now, or what do you think? Do we need to prepare anything else for it? Wait, is there? Oh yeah, there is a Rust icon. I'm sorry, that's very triggering. I should have. I'll scroll up. I won't scroll back down. Don't worry. I won't show. I won't show that dreaded icon again. What else was I looking for? Okay, I actually think that is everything related to weapons. I don't know that I'm missing anything.
Okay, I'm back. So I will actually need to go in like few minutes, but.
Oh, okay. So in those few minutes, we should be able to immediately implement this Raylib thing.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, but I think we have a nice progress. The types seem actually pretty complete.
Yeah, I only did units and weapons so far. I was looking.
Oh yeah, I see you added some launch spin and stuff. I'm wondering if we should actually handle it from the script itself, though. Maybe.
Yeah, it might be. I just wanted to denote that we're.
Yeah, I mean,
using
it's
this.
good to know that right now, but maybe we will be able to refactor it later. But yeah, anyways, I think it's pretty good. The hardest thing I'm thinking is will be probably the thing I'm most scared is integrating networking with the scripting layer. But yeah, we will see. It might be hard. Besides that, I think we could make some more progress tomorrow.
Yeah, I guess. What time is it anyway? It's only like 12:12. All right. Well, we've been able to get some pretty good progress overall done. I agree. I do think we should really, like, the next time we sit down tomorrow or some other time, we should just get the Raylib thing done. Like, it sounds kind of bizarre, but I think getting this first part of the roadmap where we write just enough code to launch a game kind of thing, that getting that step done is a pretty big one, just because then we can start to, if we want to target networking immediately, we can. If we want to just jump back to data editing and like getting the structures set up and starting to work on how we're going to implement all this stuff. Yeah, like Chalk says, a Marine and Scourge demo. If we can just do that, the Marine and Scourge demo, then I don't see why we if we can achieve that, we can start to work on everything else after that, I think. So yeah, pretty good. How do you feel overall? You feel like this is a real thing? Did you die?
No, I'm here.
You feeling like it's a real thing?
Ask me anything?
Yeah. How you feeling overall?
What was the question? Oh yeah, pretty good. I think we had some progress. And can't wait to see some more. Honestly.
Yeah. What do you think about my idea that the next time we sit down, we just absolutely barrel through the visual implementation to launch a game?
Yeah,
I think
I don't know about
the best
tiles, but
it might be a null map. Yeah, it might be a completely empty map.
Yeah, but that would be nice. Also having some basic orders, like move order without pathfinding, would be nice.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Probably the scripting integration would also be nice.
Yeah.
To just like see how it works for now.
Yeah, it's fractal in that sense, right? It definitely barrels out ridiculously.
Yep.
There you go. All right. Well, that was our first session developing the Antikythera engine. And yeah, pretty good progress in that sense. Guess we'll be back to work on the graphics side of things, getting Raylib working with this and OpenGL working with this. And then after that, it'll be the scripting stuff. It'll be like where we can basically pull on any thread we want and keep working on it from that on. So, yeah, I'm pretty pumped. I'm pretty excited. So thanks very much for your time, Viker. Guess we'll be back later on.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.